Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you on the ground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you break. We've had enough of all the money you make. We've had enough, no more life gets taken. We've had enough, this is a proclamation.
It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait.
Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you were breaking. We've had enough of all the money you were making. We had enough, no more life gets taken. We had enough, this is a proclamation. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, just roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you're breaking. We've had enough, all the money you're making. We've had enough, no more life gets taken. We've had enough, this is the proclamation. We've had enough. Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice. We've had enough. Michael Brown and Eric gonna pay the price. We've had enough. Philando, Breonna, George Floyd. What? We've had enough. So many gone. How can we fill the void?
How can we feel?
We've had enough. John Crawford, I know you've heard. We've had enough. Sandra Bland, come on and take a stand. We've had enough. Sean Bell, what the hell? We've had enough. Freddie Gray, did you hear what I said? We've had enough. This is a proclamation.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Hey, D. Phillips, how are you? I'm glad to be here. Glad to have you along. We do it every day, 5 days a week. Conversations with Al McFarlane. Mondays, we try to connect with people in our neighborhood world here in Twin Cities. Leaders at Hawthorne neighborhood, Jordan, Central Powderhorn, Corcoran, the neighborhood movement, and we want to pay attention to that as we move into new administrations in the City Council of Minneapolis, new City Council members from 4th Ward in North Minneapolis, the return of Jeremiah Ellison to 5th Ward in North Minneapolis, the joining of the council by Latricia Vital, 4th Ward. She was a park board commissioner. The term ends as she takes on her new responsibilities as city council member when the new members are sworn in January. In South Minneapolis or Southeast Minneapolis, Robin Warbaugh, I think her last name is properly pronounced, and Robin has joined the council as a member of the Democratic Socialist Party, a stunning upset over the incumbent Cam Gordon. And so she will be there. Also in South Minneapolis, joining the park board. We talked to her last week, and Alicia Smith, excellent organizer, motivator, action-oriented young leader. And so we want to continue to grow this relationship with people in neighborhoods and community. We think that we should be thinking of neighborhoods as the sort of quote unquote city councils of the community, organized in ways to provide input, provide legislative analysis, policy recommendations to the city council and to the mayor. So we want that to happen. I want today to, I've reached out to both Latricia and Robin, seeing if they might be available. I've not heard back from them yet, but if they are available to join this program at the bottom of the hour, I'd love to bring them on just to talk about what they are doing to plan and prepare for taking their office in City Council, 2nd Ward and 4th Ward, both as newly elected council members. So if you are connected to either of those candidates and see them or hear them, tell them I'm looking for them, and I'd like to have them on today's program. In the meantime, early this morning, I think around 6 or so, 6:15, I was a part of a panel presented at Black Press USA, the Facebook page of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, a great panel covering 3 different topics. And I want to share that half-hour conversation with you in case you missed it. I thought it was very interesting. I was pleased to be part of the panel. Before I do that, I want to say kudos to the National Newspaper Publishers Association, National NNPA, we call it, is it's called the Black Press of America. It's the voice of Black America. Over 200 newspapers that reach, inform, connect our people nationwide every week. I think over 12 million readers, perhaps just a larger number than that. But I want to say again, kudos to NNPA, now under the leadership of Dr. Benjamin Chaves, a renowned leader and figure in the civil rights, human rights struggle in his own right, but now leading the Black press, and I say in an admirable way. So we're going to tune into that. I want to also say that I usually send out a notice on Facebook or share to groups that I either belong to or follow. And among them are several groups that are called Sykes Family, for example. Let me see what they are here. There's a group called, let's see, one second here. Groups, just reviewing. There's a group called DNA Cousins Connect that I'm part of. I send out notices to Black-owned businesses in Minnesota, to the African American Family Reunion, to a group called North Talk, and also to a group called the Major Taylor Bicycling Club of Minnesota. Well, these groups are all local but based in community activist organizations, and my intent is simply to share these conversations with them and to invite them to be on board to this conversation with you. And I'm saying this now because I want to invite them, if they're monitoring, to actually join the conversation, to share again this link to their networks and to invite more people to grow our audience here. But I mentioned the Sykes Family. So there's a group called Sykes Family Public Group, Sykes Family Private Group. I'm a member of both. A group called Family 1000 and another called World of Sykes. Well, what does all that mean? I am a Sykes, that's why. And I've said this before too. My mom's maiden name is Sykes. They're from Sunflower, Mississippi. And as I got into genealogy, starting first with genie.com and then going to Ancestry and African Ancestry, and then my family heritage, these all genealogical DNA-based family search tools. I found out that this network of Sykes people is massive. And part of the story, and I could be wrong in this, but as I understand it, after slavery and probably very end of slavery, there were a lot of Sykes men who had several families across Mississippi. They were itinerant farmers and maybe sharecroppers and cotton pickers who would move from town to town following the harvest or the picking of the cotton. And so some of these men had several families. I recall a story in particular where my grandmother. We called her Big Mama, but her name was Martha Harrison. And when she was a child in Sunflower, Mississippi, the story goes, Alan Sykes, who became her eventual husband, and my grandfather came through and stayed at the either stayed or visited or lunch. I'm not sure of the detail, but somehow it was connected to the Harrison family. Martha Harrison was her name. And notice here, grown man, he might have been 30 at the time. She was 11, 12, 13, and told the her father, whose name was Ollie Harrison or Allie Harrison, and her mother, Lizzie Harrison, that saved that one there, that 13 or 14 or whatever, young child for me. I'm coming back for her. And so sounds kind of weird, but that's exactly what happened. He came back and they married, and that's how our family, the Harrisons from that lineage, became part of the Sykes. So the question is, how many families did Sykes have? And if I understand this, a lot of men were, moving and in different parts of the state of Mississippi, probably other states as well. And they may have had multiple generations of families. If Mr. Sykes, if my grandfather, Alan Sykes, was in his 30s, or older, he must have been at least 20, 30 years older than my grandmother. And he probably had a family or two before that time. So I'm fascinated by this thing of genealogy and how our people connect with each other and how we are such an expansive number of people. So I'm saying all this to say that if you are part of the Sykes organization, you get my notifications. I'm interested in creating an online expression of our affiliation, of our relationship. And so I invite anybody who's in the Sykes family, if you know somebody that's a Sykes, to sign in, sign up, join in, be part of the conversation. I'm particularly interested in entrepreneurs among the Sykes family groups. And so if you are an entrepreneur, you're a Sykes or affiliated with the Sykes, I want you to reach out to me, connect, because I want to create a discussion about what it means to be an entrepreneurial people, but have that in the context of actually bloodlines, family relationships. How do we discover that there's a propensity, there's a history, there's a legacy of entrepreneurship and business, that we don't come to this by accident, that there's something almost in a retention or a memory that we may not be conscious of, but it draws us towards entrepreneurial activity. Well, that's my question for the day. So Sykes, if you're there, if you're part of the Sykes family, and if your family has the same kind of expressions or feelings or stories, I'd love to connect. I think we should do that. Oh, by the way, I'm trying to arrange a program, hopefully this week, if not the next. One of my Thursday programs, I've reached out to a philosopher who teaches in the philosophy department at the University of Ghana at Legon. And he wrote an article that I've made reference to. The article is called, I've got it here, which is really cool. The article is called Black Lives Matter and the Removal of Racist Statues. Black Lives Matter and the Removal of Racist Statues. I made copies of this. It's an article presented by Dr. Caesar Alamsinya Aturi, or Atuire. And he's an intellectual who lived a number of years in Italy, taught in Italy, and is back now in Ghana. But the article captured my attention because it starts off talking about Minneapolis, about the murder of George Floyd, about the Black Lives Matter movement, and about how that connects the global questioning, reckoning of representation. So there are statues in this town and around the country, around the world, that elevate, that glorify, brutal, murderous people, and frame what they did in the context of either national or cultural destiny, manifest destiny, etc. And the question that Black Lives Matter raises is whether we have an obligation to challenge the histories that are reflected, the stories, the narratives reflected in that process. And I want to throw out another word of thanks here before I show this. There's a friend of mine, never met in person, consider him a dear friend. He's an elder and leader in the community, Sanford Berman. Sanford Berman is a librarian. And every week, Sanford sends me a set of clippings, things that just reading his catalog alone keeps me attuned to major themes, not only here in Minnesota, but around the country. And for example, I got a mailing today where he has a piece from the daily newspaper, the Star Tribune, and the piece is Robert E. Lee, Statue is History. And so that speaks right to the discussion that I'm going to be having with Professor Atuar and others, hopefully later this week, about statues, what they mean, what they do for a people, for a community, and what we should be doing. So let me do this. Let me cue up AZ, the program this morning. The program this morning included me, an editor for the Baltimore Times newspaper, another member of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and a stellar reporter who is a regular feature writer for the Black Press of America. It also featured our esteemed executive director, president of NNPA, Dr. Benjamin Chaves, and it's hosted by Brother Brown, who does an excellent job every day presenting this NNPA early morning news frame. You should check it out if you like this. Figure out how to get to it, and it's a good way to begin the day every day, looking at key issues facing our people nationwide and market by market. So, AZ, would you go ahead and play the program? Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to the Monday, December 20th, 2021 edition of the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. Who is in charge? In a heated exchange between Vice President Kamala Harris and radio personality Charlamagne the God, the Vice President erupted when Charlamagne suggested that West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin was really the president. We have a lot to say about that this morning, about Joe Manchin, with our guests. And let's bring on our guests right now. Capitol Hill reporter extraordinaire Lauren Burke, Insight News publisher Al McFarlane, and Baltimore Times associate publisher Paris Brown. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, thanks for joining us. Before we get into the Joe Manchin, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Democrat, Republican dynamic, let's start with our news headlines this morning. We have a couple this morning. 3 retired U.S. Army generals warned of an insurrection or even civil war if the results of the 2024 presidential election were not accepted by some in the military. Former Major General Paul Eaton, former Major General Antonio Taguba, and former Brigadier General Stephen Anderson made the warnings in an op-ed in the Washington Post over the weekend. They wrote that they were increasingly concerned about the 2024 election and the potential for lethal chaos inside our military. The generals highlighted the disturbing number of veterans and active duty members of the military.
And reporting has shown that right-wing groups were plotting to bring weapons
on the Capitol by supporters of former President Donald Trump. More than 1 in 10 of those charged had a service record. They outlined a possible situation in which after the 2024 election, some service members might pledge loyalty to a Trumpian loser who refuses to concede defeat and tries to lead a shadow government. I want to get your thoughts on that, Lauren. Is it too soon to be looking at that?
You know what? I wasn't paying attention to the top of your news, so go to Al or Paris.
Wow.
prescription drug money. Sorry about
no.
that.
No, I think it's time to look at it, and it's a serious question. But the counter way of looking at it is to recognize the presence of our people in the military. I'm a veteran. I served in the Navy, and I'm connected to veterans here in Twin Cities and through the Veterans Association. And what I can tell you is that the presence, the posture, the stature of African American service men and women is significant, important, and is a counterbalance to the crazies. I experienced, and this is like in the 70s, before you guys were born, probably, when I was in active duty. I mean, the 1970s, actually the 60s. Just rebel white boys and their co-conspirators in silence from the North, who always had an attitude about Black people. But I also experienced a sense of solidarity and a sense of maintaining both safety and self-defense among Black military men and women. So we didn't back down, didn't back up, and didn't take no mess from nobody. We knew that when white boys got drunk on shore duty, they started getting loose with the lip, we fought. So I'm saying that attitude is probably amplified now, and that we simply have to be aware of and embrace and connect our sons and daughters, our grandsons and granddaughters who are in the military, and create both a discussion and an expectation that they know what to do. They know what to do for Black people, and what to do for Black people is really what to do for our country. We have a stake in ensuring that democracy works for everybody in the country, and we certainly can't let them take it away from us.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can get Lauren's attention for our next news topic.
You got me.
Okay, I would like to add to.
Go ahead, Paris.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's too early to have that conversation, but I agree with Al. It is about upholding and protecting the Constitution of the United States, which is also the safety of the American people. So, yes, they need to have this conversation now. We do need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, we don't need to a repeat of January 6th where, you just could not have imagined that happening. Our next topic this morning, President Biden's Build Back Better legislation is dead on arrival, and it's a Democrat who killed the bill. Democrat Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia said he's a no on the Build Back Better Act.
With this piece of legislation, I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
You're done. This is a no.
This is a no.
It's a no, and so I definitely want Lauren's perspective on this, because he not only said no, say he's voting no, but he went to the Republican-friendly Fox News. Is there any significance behind that?
Yeah, the significance is they're not going to ask him any questions about exactly what he doesn't want in the bill and what exactly his framework was that he just brought to the White House days ago. That's the significance of Fox News. And also just waiting until the Senate adjourned on Friday after doing a bunch of ambassadors and some judges so that he wouldn't get chased around the hallway by media that was going to ask him specific questions as to why he has a problem with this bill. Clearly, the explanation given on Fox makes no sense, that he, quote, can't explain it to people in West Virginia, which is the 6th poorest state in the United States, where things like free pre-K and insulin caps of $35, capping insulin at $35. Okay, a child tax credit, which of course puts money in the pocket of everybody, but also low and middle class Americans. Bernie Sanders was on CNN shortly after hearing this yesterday. He said that he would commission a poll in West Virginia to see if people in West Virginia would in fact agree or not agree with what Manchin is saying. But it makes absolutely no sense, his explanation. The only logical explanation is the most obvious one, which is that Joe Manchin is owned by Big Pharma and Big Coal. He's worth $4 million. He's worth $4 million because of coal. And his son is running the coal company that he made $4 million, that he's worth $4 million off of. And why I was distracted at the top of the show, I was trying to get the exact number of the amount of money that Big Pharma, that the pharmaceutical industry has donated to him. I'm sure it's in the hundreds of thousands, if not over $1 million.
It's over $1 million. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, his votes just happen to align with the two things that are giving him the most money, and we're supposed to sit here and pretend that we're not noticing that. So that was ridiculous what we saw yesterday.
Well, and the NNPA's executive administrator, Claudia Perry, says he's a Republican who infiltrated the Democratic Party. And, you know, this is the first time, Lauren and Al and Paris, that the White House has hit back at one of their own, or supposedly one of their own. You know, we heard Bernie Sanders, I mean, he gave a scathing rebuke of Senator Manchin. He even said that he wants to bring this to a vote because he wants Manchin to stand up there and say no and explain why, as Lauren just said, because he doesn't want to explain why. But also here, listen to this, and I want you guys' reaction to this. The president learned that his chief negotiating partner, I'm reading the statement here, was pulling the plug from the White House aides who did not hear the news directly from Senator Manchin, but from a member of his staff just 30 minutes before Manchin went on Fox News. And the White House issued a scathing statement. They said that Manchin's comments were at odds, this is a quote from the White House, at odds with the White House and with his own public utterances. And here's what Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, said. She says, on Tuesday of this week, Senator Manchin came to the White House and submitted to the president in person directly a written outline for a Build Back Better bill that was the same size and scope as the president's framework and covered many of the same priorities. While that framework was missing key priorities, we believe it could lead to a compromise acceptable to all. She went on to say, if his comments on Fox and written statement indicate an end to that effort, they represent a sudden and inexplicable reversal in his position and a breach of his commitments to the president and the senator's colleagues in the House and Senate. That's as strong a statement you're going to get from the White House, isn't that so, Al?
Well, we've discussed this dilemma that the Democrats find themselves in on my program. I have a team of lawyers and politicians that talk every Thursday. And the conclusion that came from one of our participants, former dean of South Carolina Law School, Burnell Venable Powell, was that somehow Joe Biden has to rediscover the Johnson grit, the Johnson gusto. What he meant by that was that in the old days of the big tent Democratic Party politics, a politician like Lyndon B. Johnson would call a Joe Manchin in and not plead with him, not ask him, but pretty much say, damn it, here's the deal. Here's what you're going to do. And if you don't do it, you won't be returning to the Senate. We don't think that's happened. Does it need to happen? Absolutely.
Well, hey, Al, let me jump in for a second, Al. Didn't Donald Trump do that? I mean,
Trump been doing it. Trump
do it?
Yeah, absolutely. But the Democrats have not. That's the point I'm making. And the one that famously managed and governed or led like that was good old boy Lyndon B. Johnson. The question is, can Biden, who's been around for a long time, who knows that scenario, muster the the gristle to bring that to the table and to bring Joe Manchin and the other outliers in, because we're so close. We're so close, and it makes no sense that Manchin can thwart the progress of the nation when, as Lauren said, we see the reasons. It's his personal financial, who owns him, that's controlling his vote.
Well, Lauren, does the president have the guts?
I don't know. I don't think so. And where we're really going to see this, the 200-pound elephant in the room is really on voting rights, because Manchin is against changing the filibuster. So you figure if Joe Biden's not using the full weight of his office to change Manchin's mind on Build Back Better, why would he use the full weight of his office on voting rights and the filibuster? We haven't seen it.
Yeah, Paris, you see this play out. It affects folks in Baltimore just as much as it affects everyone else around the country. Can the president change this, Paris?
I agree with Al. There's a time to fight and there's a time to refrain from fighting, and it is necessary to fight. I agree with Al in terms of, it's you watch this play out, and literally his, Kamala Harris mentioned this in an interview. His vote is on global stage right now, and I agree. There are some of his colleagues are saying, let's put this to the floor as a vote, so he can tell the world and the United States no. So he needs to be put on public stage to justify his actions, even against his own constituents.
Yeah, well, the other thing is,
go ahead, Lauren.
We haven't seen Joe Biden do what Dr. Reverend William Barber, Repairers of the Breach, has said he should do, which is go to West Virginia, go to the poorest county in West Virginia, and verify this idea that Manchin can't explain to his constituents why this bill is a good thing. You want to talk about using the full weight of your office or going full LBJ, go to West Virginia and talk to poor people in West Virginia about whether or not they want their insulin capped and they want universal pre-K. I mean, I'm not sure why that can't happen. The other thing that's in there, though, I think the ultimate thing that Manchin is against is in the bill is language that would give the government the ability to negotiate prescription drug prices. Okay, that's what this is really about. This is about money staying in the hands of the drug industry. I mean, that's what Manchin and Sinema are all about. And the idea that they can deny that when it's so obvious where the money goes in terms of donations is foolhardy.
Well, and he said something I still have a problem when I hear any politician, I don't care what party you're with, he says we shouldn't be given handouts. They are the ultimate handouts.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, we do that with so many things. I mean, I'll just start with the farmers. Farm subsidies are in the billions right now. We hand out to other countries all the time. I mean, this idea that you're only against spending that would benefit low income and middle class people, but you're okay. He was okay. He didn't say anything about the deficit when he was voting on the defense bill. Okay, but now all of a sudden, when it's this, now there's this big conversation. I mean, I think part of the irritation here is he just wasted 6 months of everybody's time. They've been talking to him for 6 months. And remember, the bill originally, one of the bills was $6 trillion. They went down to $2 trillion. They went down because of Manchin. Yep. They wanted to pay for it. He's complaining about the pay fors. How are we going to pay for this? And then they came up with a pay for. He was against that. So it doesn't matter what they say or what they do. And Schumer's right this morning. Put the bill on the floor and let's see a vote.
Yeah.
Well, Melissa J. Hill is watching from West Virginia. She says, teach, teach, teach. I am from West Virginia, and our number one revenue stream is federal funds for property. Look, Mitt Romney a couple of weeks ago referred to Joe Manchin as President Joe Manchin. Solomon the God and Vice President Kamala Harris had a very interesting interview just a few days ago in which he also referred to Manchin as President Manchin. We have some clips, and we want to discuss this because we think it's important to discuss this. Let's watch this clip from the
Republicans are blocking progress, but when I think about it, it's like we went out, black people, we voted, got Democrats in the White House, got Democrats the Senate, but it seems like a Democrat, Joe Manchin, is always blocking progress. Like if there's no hope in making Joe change, like why not say that so at least we know who the problem is? Because I feel like you get villainized the way I feel Senator Joe Manchin should. Me personally. In the media, you get villainized for silly things like earbuds when he's actually stopping progress. Manchin, no. I want to know who's the real president of this country. Is it Joe Biden or Joe Manchin?
I'm sorry. I interrupted. I don't think the vice president can hear you. It's Simone. I'm so sorry, Charlamagne. We have to wrap.
She can hear me.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me, Madam Vice President?
I'm sorry. We got to wrap.
Oh.
So I'm sorry to interrupt.
They're acting like they can't hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, so who's the real president of this country? Is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, Madam Vice President?
Come on, Charlamagne. It's Joe Biden.
I can't tell sometimes.
No. It's Joe Biden. And don't start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not he's president.
Do you think Joe Manchin is a problem?
It's Joe Biden, and I'm vice president, and my name is Kamala Harris. And the reality is, because we are in office, we do the things like the child tax credit, which is going to reduce Black child poverty by 50%, on track to do that. We do things that are about saying that our Department of Justice is going to do these investigations and require that we end chokeholds and have body cameras. It is the work of saying we're going to get lead out of pipes and paint because our babies are suffering because of that. It is the work of saying people who ride public transit deserve the same kind of dignity that anybody else does. So let's improve that system.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's no question who's the president of the NNPA. He's here with us now, Dr. Benjamin Chaves. Dr. Chaves, good morning.
Good morning, and we thank all of our panelists for being with us. There's an old axiom in the Black press. If you ask a tough question, be prepared for a tough answer. So Vice President Harris gave Charlamagne what he asked for.
And so with that, Al, Lauren, Paris, your response, and we'll take it in that order. Al, we'll start with you. Your response to that exchange between the Vice President and Charlamagne.
I thought it was excellent. Number one, I think Charlamagne asked the right question. He asked it in the right spirit. His job, his duty, and his platform allows him to say what people are thinking and what popular culture and popular protocols have us not do, say, or think. He did it. But I think equally she was brilliant and she was on point and she was right to respond the way she did. And I think that the takeaway here is that we have to challenge our own people and put them in a position where they have to be harder, go harder, fight longer, and deliver what we want them to deliver for us. And they have to be in a position where they say, I can't go back there and tell them that that I can't get this done. President Biden, Vice President Harris have to be in a position where they cannot come back and report to Black America or America that we just couldn't get voting rights done.
Yeah, Lauren?
I think Charlamagne's question, as we just learned yesterday, was, of course, once again, the right question. And anytime you have somebody sitting around who's only gotten 200,000 votes versus somebody who's the president of the United States has gotten over 75 and 80 million votes, you want to ask that question. I actually think the vice president greatly overreacted, quite frankly. I mean, there's a lot of ways to react to questions that you don't like or questions that you think are stupid. But you have to remember, and I say this knowing that she's the most over-analyzed vice president in the history of the United States. I get it, but she doesn't have to act as if she's got to match Charlamagne in anything. She could have just said, "Look, Charlamagne, I get the spirit of your question, but obviously, the president of the United States is Joe Biden. But we got to be real here. Joe Biden has not built public support for Build Back Better. He has not done everything that he can do to build public support for Build Back Better. And when you got a narcissistic United States senator who likes to talk to the media all the time, who likes to be chased around by the press, which is why he walks out on the Capitol Plaza so the press can chase him and so he can be on TV all night, you got to match that. You got to match that in your media and your communication strategy. And the White House is not doing that.
Yeah, and Paris, it seems to me that it was more of, and we love Simone Sanders. It seems like it was Simone who didn't want that question answered, but the vice president basically said, no, I'm going to answer it, and this is how I'm going to answer it. And she was very forceful in her answer, correct?
Yes, the old Kamala Harris came back, but I think it was a necessary question to come from her office to say, look, this is the president, this is the vice president. Let's just set the record straight. But I think that one of the things that is really important, he never asked her about the issues that she was laying down, but those issues, every single one of those policy agenda issues that she's talking about, those are the issues of the Congressional Black Caucus. Combating voter registration, strengthening the protection for workers, healthcare, pre-K, all of those issues are issues that impact the African-American community. And so there was no questions about that, but that is the CBC's agenda, which she put forth during that interview.
Well, also we know too that at that point in time, the White House had not responded. At that point in time of this interview with Charlemagne, the Manchin had not said no to Build Back Better. And at that time, the White House had not said what it said yesterday, which is they really took Senator Manchin to task. You think that would have changed anything in that interview? And the vice president's response had the White House put out its response before her interview with Charlemagne?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. You see, the premise of the question that Joe Biden's leadership is weak stands as a problem until we saw that statement, which obviously he approved last night, which of course lit Manchin up. But quite frankly, if Jamal Bowman and AOC and Cori Bush and Ilhan Omar could figure this out 2 months ago, I'm not sure why the White House couldn't figure it out, talking directly to Joe Manchin every single day. So somebody's got to wake up over there, because the strategy they're using with Manchin is not working. Also, there should be some pressure on Chuck Schumer, because Chuck Schumer made a deal with Manchin in the background that nobody knew about on the House side, that wasted 4 months. And, when Pelosi can't get the votes, everybody's on Nancy Pelosi talking about how Nancy Pelosi couldn't bring it home. Well, Schumer can't get the votes, and he's only got 50 people to worry about. So at some point, Schumer's got to enter into this as a player and as somebody who gets criticized.
Yeah, and Dr. Chaves, the White House finished their statement by saying, just as Senator Manchin reversed his position on Build Back Better this morning, we will continue to press him to see if he will reverse his position yet again, to honor his prior commitments and be true to his words. Dr. Chaves, your knowledge of the administration, how do you think this is going to play out ultimately?
Well, I think the administration should change its strategy. Listen, Senator Manchin, no one senator ought to hold the destiny of Black America, of communities of color, of progressive America in their hands. I think the Democrats should have been trying all at the same time to woo at least one or two Republicans to join with them. They're moderate Republicans. I think going in alone strategy is not working. And I think the bills that have been passed thus far have gotten one or two Republican votes. Yes. Look at the select committee that Benny Thompson is running. There are two Republicans on that committee, and they're making progress. And so I think that at the end of the day, you want to get voting rights protected. At the end of the day, you want to get those issues that Vice President Harris responded to Charlemagne. We want to get those things made law. And time is running out. They did the debt ceiling. I mean, they got, and I think the filibuster, I think there has to be courage. And I think Vice President Biden, who's a former senator, keep in mind, a lot of the strategy that the White House has embarked upon is because both the president and the vice president are former senators. Keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. It's not a foreign body. They're a part of the body that's now, they were a part of the body that's now being an obstructionist. And I think Lauren is right. Senator Schumer is going to have to step up to the plate. The Senate needs to fundamentally change. We talk about systemic racism and law enforcement. We have not talked about systemic racism in the Congress of the United States, that's the way it is structured. Filibuster is part of systemic racism. And if we're not willing in this tenure to get rid of the filibuster, then we're always going to be in a situation where one or two, either right-wing Republicans or there's some right-wing Democrats, i.e. Senator Manchin, will be obstructionists. The quality of life in our communities is too much at stake to put it in the hands of these people that want to please Trump's base at the same time, pretend like that they are doing something for all American people. I think that the battle lines have been drawn, and I think that even if the Democrats lose, they need to go down fighting. If they don't fight, then they're going to lose the House and the Senate. So that's what's at stake right now. The future of America is at stake again.
Well, and to Lauren's earlier point too, reading just a quick statement from Ayanna Pressley, the progressive Democrat from Massachusetts. She says that we cannot allow one lone senator from West Virginia to obstruct the president's agenda, to obstruct the people's agenda. She says he has continued to move the goalposts. He has never negotiated in good faith, and he's obstructing the president's agenda. And Rep. Jayapal said that this is what we feared. She said that they should have passed the infrastructure bill along with the Build Back Better. And if you recall, Lauren, they separated them. And she said that, we did take the president's word that he would get 50 votes in the Senate.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, those 6 progressives were absolutely right. We all know that now. But the bigger piece is that we're in a fight for our democracy, because the next round is on the filibuster and on voting rights. Manchin does not want to change the filibuster rules until a Republican agrees, which we all know is not going to happen. The only person I can think of on the Republican side that would even think about doing that is Lisa Murkowski. I can't imagine the White House has not spoken to her about all of this, but we've got the Republican Party in the background rigging the states to steal an election in 2024. And the Democratic Party has got to realize that that's the bigger piece here.
Yeah. Paris Brown from the Baltimore Times, who shares the same name as my daughter. I want to get your final thoughts as we close out this morning.
Wow. Nothing about politics has changed from the very beginning. But we do need to fight. I think and the truth really needs to be on public display behind what's going on. Manchin is bought and paid for. And I agree. His constituents need to know the truth behind what's going on. It is, I sit here in amazement, because I do understand the power that is wielded by blocks of groups such as the Congressional Black Caucus. It's a power block. Historically, right now, it is the largest voting block of 55 that can actually vote. And we need to use that platform to push forth our agenda. And to tell the truth about what's going on in policies that impact us. There are issues in this bill, right? But at the same time, there are issues that are impacting our communities. And I think it's so important to understand those things in the larger scheme of what's happening. We need to fight. We need to fight.
Al McFarlane, Insight
we need
News.
to fight.
Well, I come away with 2 what ifs. What if DC was a state? How would that change the dynamic of governance? And what if we changed the number of justices in the Supreme Court?
Yes.
And we didn't have a Supreme Court stacked by the conservatives, by Donald Trump, and those that intend to deny, that will support the negation of the advances we've made as a people. So I'm saying we've got to think differently, think more broadly, and see the connection between the institutions that limit our capability and breakthrough by changing the composition of the court, breakthrough by changing the composition of the Senate. And that means creating representation in the Senate and in the House from Washington, D.C. I think, as you said, Paris, we've got to fight, and we simply have to talk about the fight and mobilize and encourage our people to think, talk, and demand.
Yes.
And Lauren Burke, your closing thoughts.
My closing thoughts is that if everybody thinks that this is exciting, watch what happens next month when we get into voting rights. And thankfully, for information purposes only, Reverend Barber has been great at focusing on exactly where this was leading. Barbara Arnwine and Reverend William Barber have been saying that this moment was coming for 4 months, 5 months now at least. And it came to Build Back Better first, but we're going to have the same discussion next month.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Chaves, of course, your closing thoughts.
For all of our 230 African-American owned newspapers and as they're well represented on this panel, and Karen Carter Richards at NNPA. I just want to remind everybody that we not only need to change what's going on in Washington, we also have to change what's going on in these state legislatures, state legislatures around the country. And these, I agree with Al, but one way you change the Senate is also you have to vote some of these senators out of office.
What you do.
You know, don't think that these people are invincible. You know, from Kentucky to Texas to Georgia, you know, we got Georgia, but they're going to fight back. And I think that Florida is a key state, you know, as well as Texas. We have to do a better job at the state level and at the grassroots level. If you want to change Washington, you don't change Washington just in DC. You change Washington in every precinct, in every congressional district, in every Senate race. A lot is on the line in 2022. You know, as it was in 2020. You know, what happened in January the 6th, last January, it was only a dress rehearsal to what's going to happen in 2022, and as Lauren said, in 2024. This is the next civil war in America, and we all better be prepared.
Well, we certainly thank you all. Thank our producer for putting together this great panel with this great discussion. The NNPA's Midwinter Training Conference, we want to remind you, of course, it kicks off on January 19th at the Diplomat Beach Resort in Hollywood, Florida through the 22nd, where the theme is the publishing industry advancing the Black press of America, reaffirming, engaging, and empowering. Visit www.nnpa-events.com to register and reserve your hotel room. The NNPA is adhering to strict COVID safety procedures, including anyone responsible for dining areas. They will wear gloves, social distance for everyone in all spaces, masks, and so forth. The NNPA repeatedly and will continue to advocate all necessary safety measures for its staff, freelancers, and all guests. So join us next month in Hollywood, Florida. Thanks for joining us this morning. We will see you tomorrow.
Okay, what a great program, and what a wonderful program. I see Victoria Dooley is here and Dee is here. And if there are others that want to join the program, please figure out how to reach out to AZ at insightnews.com, and we can send you a link to have you on the program as well. One of the comments that came across Facebook was from Marvin S. Robinson II. Marvin said, so this is organizational. He's saying that the entire population of people inside the U.S. should be given open voting rights. Is there a discussion about making sure the implementation of the amendments to our U.S. Constitution should be abandoned through budgetary agendas that have historically allowed the Black African American citizens to have the lowest income per capita of all other populations? Good question. Thank you for raising that, Brother Marvin. Marvin goes on to say, what about reparations? Our people are struggling and suffering like never before, and all others continue to go to the bank off of the investments, suffrage, and everything else in between. Even though cobalt used in cell phone technology is being mined in Africa, it's being exploited, and we on this side of the Atlantic are worse off than brand new populations. So, Brother Marvin, thank you for your comments, and thanks to others who are monitoring and watching. Victoria and Dee, let me get some feedback. What do you guys think? I was so pleased to be part of that conversation so early in the morning, but I think a critical conversation, and I'm wondering how those ideas came across to you. Dee, let me go to you first. If you got a comment or a feeling or impression, what do you think?
Well, it was a pretty powerful presentation, to be sure. I guess I wonder where we've lost the understanding that the senators and representatives are there for us and not for themselves. Mm-hmm. That really troubles me. Manchin troubles me. And I don't know what to do. I don't know what my response is. I don't know what my recourse is, but there has to be something.
Mm-hmm. Victoria, what are your thoughts when you listen to the program, that discussion? What feelings or notes did you take mentally? What thoughts did you have that you can share?
Well, I was kind of in agreement with you. What's her name, Pamela Brown, and yourself. That you know what we need
Paris
to be
Brown. Paris Brown. Yeah.
Paris Brown. Thank you. We need to be made aware of those issues that mostly affect us. And it seems like there's a whole lot of stuff going on. And I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this and I'm like, wow, some of this stuff I didn't know about or I hadn't heard about. And I'm like, wow, a whole lot of stuff is going on. And so I thought it was interesting, the question that he threw out there at her and her response. And even though my mind grows a blank right now, that transit part sticks in my mind, you know, and of course, all the other things that Vice President spoke on was also very important. And I hope that they do move forward in that. But I'm like, yeah, I think we would be, as a people, better positioned knowing more about what's going on with those specific things that directly affect us. Not that the other stuff isn't important for us to know, but those things that so that we don't get thrown off the block where we're already at. You know, we don't be caught unaware because it's being made known to us.
Right. Well, you know, what you're talking about is Vice President Harris's response to the question from Charlemagne. The God Charlemagne asked, is Joe Manchin the real president? And she took, I think, umbrage or really offense. And what was interesting about that clip was that her handler, who I know, tried to intervene a little bit.
Yes.
And, you know, and Charlemagne said they trying to act like they can't hear us, right? You know, and to her credit, the vice president said, no, I hear you perfectly and let me respond. And so she came back, I think, with a little ire and a little heat. And what he ended up saying after that is, that's the Kamala Harris I'm looking for, the one you just revealed. You know, laying it down, throwing it down. I'm looking for that in all the actions of, you know, your leadership team. So I thought that was good. That was important.
Yes.
But what she did say is that, you know, we are doing stuff. We are mobilizing our people and to deliver tax credit for children. We're trying to get that done. That's going to be significant in moving 50% of Black children out of poverty. She said we are initiating Justice Department investigations of systemic racism and systemic denial and blocking of opportunity and of voting challenges. So we are working on getting lead out of buildings and houses and out of situations that create health hazards for our people. And you said it caught your attention when she talked about public transit, you know?
Yes.
And so I think that what you're saying, what we're saying is that she was right to come back with those specifics.
That's
those
right.
things that she's doing, and what she probably needs to continue to lead with is that, look, y'all, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're doing, and keep telling that story, and tell that story in a way that also, you know, I think after the show we talked a little bit more. Maybe it was during the show, but they were saying that, you know, Biden ought to go to Virginia and challenge Manchin in his own territory. I think Dr. Chaves talked about how Kamala Harris either was going to go or did go there, and Joe Manchin was upset, as if she had to get his permission to come into his state. But here's the twist, and Lauren said this: how can a person that won an election to a Senate seat with maybe 200,000 votes or so, whatever the number of voters are in West Virginia, how can that person be in a position to block the voice, leadership, the action of a person who won 85, 90 million votes, right? The president of the United States. And so I think that puts things in context. We have to recognize, and I think the criticism from our group was that Joe Biden hasn't flexed his muscle yet. hasn't flexed enough muscle, and that if we hearken back to how Lyndon Johnson ran the country, he was kind of bare knuckled and brought in dissenters and outliers and said, look, here's the deal. Either you give it a program or you're going to be gone. Well, and as someone said, the host said, well, didn't Trump do that? Yeah, that's exactly what he did, right? And if they're doing that to destroy us and destroy opportunity and solidify their attempt to steal the country, to steal democracy, we need to use every tool in our toolbox as well.
That's right.
Right? So that's kind of what this was all about, I think, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Well, look, we have had another great program here. Just always wonderful, Dee, to talk to you. Wonderful, Victoria, to talk to you. And for those who are listening and watching, and I started off by sending a message out to the Sykes family. If you're part of the Sykes family, you tuned into this, or the McFarlane family, I'm interested in having your voice join my voice, and let's have a family discussion. I'm interested in entrepreneurship and how we show up. Is there a memory? Is there a retention that we may not even be aware of, but a memory that leads us down the path of entrepreneurship or other paths, education, law enforcement, even the negative side. So I'm interested in having that discussion, and I want to thank you all for being